Hey everyone, I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet because it's a little techy, a little Debbie. So I wanted to talk about building Nintex Workflow extensions or Nintex Workflow Cloud Extensions. Basically what we're talking about here is like custom actions for Nintex Workflow Cloud. Now, what I've done is I've done previous two posts about building a function in Azure Functions. So I built one using JavaScript and I built one using C#. Hosted it in Azure Functions, and then exposed that through OpenAPI or Swagger, formerly known as Swagger, into Nintex extensions, and they became actions in my Nintex Workflow Designer. Now, the only downside to that I found was that Azure environment was actually not mine. It's hosted by somebody else. So if I was to make those extensions or those custom actions publicly available, and all of a sudden a whole bunch of people start using them and start hitting that Azure function, there'll be a problem in that it keeps hitting that, and of course there's going to be a cost associated with that because Microsoft's not going to give that sort of CPU cycles away for free. The other thing is that it was not an always-on service, so that there's a good chance that when you guys try to access it, it might not work. So normally if you had a production environment, you would have the always-on feature activated, and then of course all your actions would work all the time. So that was one of the reasons I wanted to see if there's another way of doing it. So what I did was actually built my own and hosted it on my own site, right, on my own environment. So what I want to do is actually jump into this, which is Visual Studio. So let's actually start not from all the way over here. I'm actually going to start here. But what I want to talk about is, before I get into this is what I use to build my REST service. So basically in Visual Studio, I went to new project, and under WCF I created a WCF service application. That's pretty much it, right? That's what did all the kind of heavy lifting for me. Now with that you will get an interface, right? I actually renamed mine to iMathRest, and then you also get an actual instance of the class that inherits from that interface. In this case I just called it MathRest. Now let's have a quick look at iMathRest. Okay, so just ignore the first three functions, and we're just going to focus on these ones. So first of all, I'm going to point out the function itself. Right, I've got a bunch of functions in here. This is all going to be around some trigonometry. Really, this all came down to not necessarily a big business need, but more along the lines of I wanted to build something really quickly, something that wouldn't require a ton of code, and it would just work, right? Trigonometry using sine, cosine, tangent to do those sorts of calculations felt like it was a pretty straightforward way of doing it with one input parameter and one output parameter. Okay, so the one thing I want to point out is with the WCF service, I had an issue in regards to passing anything other than a string to these functions, so make sure that all your values are going to be strings. When it comes from the Nintex Workflow Cloud side, you're not going to have to care at all because it'll automatically convert those over, those numbers to strings anyway, so that'll be fine. And then the only other thing that I need to do is I actually, instead of returning back a double or a string, I actually return back something called a math response class. So I'm going to pop all the way down to the bottom here. All that is it has a double inside it called dResult, and it has a property over here called result. Notice the capital R, and it just has a getter and a setter. That's pretty much it. Right. Now the whole reason behind this, and I'll show you this in a moment, is that I want to make sure that the data that comes back to Nintex Workflow Cloud actually comes back as a JSON packet, and that there is a property called result with a capital R and then the actual value. Right. That way I can build my OpenAPI definition and let it know that there's going to be something in there called result with a capital R. Now going back up here, right? So each one of my methods or functions, that's how they're defined. There's also a web invoke property up here, just telling it that we're going to do a get, and in this case what we're basically saying is it's going to be a get, and the data that's going to come to this function is going to come on the query string, right, on the actual URL. So it'll be slash sine d. In this case the D stands for degrees, so if I go down here as an R, that's radians. So for those who love the trigonometry, that's basically what that stuff is. And then we're going to pass a parameter called angle and the actual value right there. Now, a couple of things to point out. Both support the JSON structure, and then this is really important. The body style is going to be bare, right? Is web message body style dot bare. The reason why it's that is that I'm using the structure of the math response object as the structure of the data that goes back. That way it's always going to be a piece of JSON data with the word result in it, colon, and then the actual value of this calculation. All right, pretty straightforward. I'm not going to harp on this any longer. Now let's have a quick look at the actual instance of that interface. Again, scroll down and just ignore those little test functions. And here you'll see math response. That is a function. We're doing some calculations. We're creating an instance of the math response class, and then we're returning that. Right? Pretty straightforward. Nothing too complicated in there. All right. Now what I'm going to do is actually jump down here into web.config. I'm going to point out a few little things that I got caught out on. My REST service is actually going to be hosted in an environment that is not SSL encrypted, right? So it's just HTTP. So not highly recommended, but this is just for kind of testing and making sure this works. So you'll see here I've got under the web HTTP binding, which you need for WCF services and to use REST, is security mode is none. So right, no SSL there. I also have all this HTTPS get enabled or set to false as well. And also down here under protocol mappings, I have add binding, basic HTTP binding, just HTTP. Now I'm pointing this out because I do not have an SSL cert for my environment at the moment, so that's why I had to, take all that out and just make it HTTP only. Okay, now the final thing is, let's have a look at the Open API definition. I'm going to scroll all the way to the top. Here we have the title. Now this is the actual name of the category in Nintex Workflow Cloud. Okay. Now the other thing is you've got the host. So this is my host, my little subdomain where I'm going to host this. HTTP. Make sure you don't have the HTTPS as well. Again, I got caught out by having that in there. Now I also have a path to this function call. I have the name. This is going to be the name of the action in the Workflow Designer. And then I have the input parameters. In this case, angle, it's a number. It's going to appear on the query string. And then a description. Notice this, angle used in sine calculation. I also have responses. So we support a 200 response, which is a successful operation. And what we're going to get back is an object. And inside that object, we're going to have a property called result. And the value is going to be a number. Right? So this is where it goes back to that math result class that I created. Now you can have multiple of these. So notice I have the sine D. I also have a cosine D. Right? All the same sort of stuff. I have a tangent D. Right? So I have about 6 in here. Now once you've built all this and you've gone and deployed it, the last thing I want to talk about in here is when I deployed this, it did not work when it was just in a virtual directory. I actually had to say in IIS convert to application, and then this all just started working. All right, now let's have a look at what it looks like from the Nintex Workflow side, Nintex Workflow Cloud side. So you log into your environment or your Workflow Cloud tenant. You go to extensions, and this is what you will see. There's an orange button on the right, which is a plus sign. You click on that. Now here you get to either send a URL to your definition, or you can import your file. I'm going to click on here and import the file. There's my math.json. If there is any issue with that, you will see a big red error down the bottom here. If there's no problem with it, this button goes orange and you'll be able to click on next. Now I've got no security around this, which basically means no authentication. You can definitely build that in, but for now I just leave it as is. And then when you click on next, here is that title, right? That's the name of the category. Here's a description of what it is. Select your image, and then you click on publish. Right now, I'm not going to do that because this will actually come up with an error because I already have it in here. So what I want to do is show you what it looks like. So here is a workflow. Notice if I scroll down, there's this math category here. Here are my 6 functions or 6 actions that I have. I dragged the sine degrees on there. When I click on it, actually what I'll show you is what it looks like when I just drag a new one on there. So it's not configured, and I click on it, It's got angle used in calculation, and it actually inserts that text as just temporary text in here. It's not real value, so I actually do have to type something in there, or insert a variable, for example. And then you store the result in a number variable. The only thing I haven't quite figured out yet is this result. I need to figure out how to modify the result. Maybe I need to just change that parameter that I sent back. Anyway, that's not a big deal. All this works. Now, what I've done in this case is made this a public web form, right? So if I go over here, let's actually go back one. This is going to be all my workflow instances. So the last one was 11:33 a.m. Here's my form. I have nothing on the form, so it's just purely for testing. I'm going to click on submit. This is going to go and kick off an instance of that workflow. Let's refresh. We should have a workflow running right there, 11:15. Perfect. It's in a running state. If I click refresh, it's completed. I can click on it, and there's the result. Now, ignore the 89 because that was actually hard-coded into the workflow. Whoops. If I look in here, I actually hard-coded that in there. All right, so this was actually doing a sine 36. So the result was 0.58778. If I bring up a calculator, bear with me, and I put 36 and do a sine, 0.58778. There you go. Exactly the same as over there. So we know that works. So great. Now we have 6 actions we can use in our workflow that we didn't have before. And because I'm hosting it on my own site, if I don't get charged for usage, then that's fine. I can use it as much as I want. But just beware. You'll probably have environments where there may be some sort of cost associated with it. But again, could be that you're just hosting it on your own internal server and have this reaching back out to it if it's publicly facing. So pretty cool that you can actually extend it in such a way. I can add more and more actions as I want. What I'm going to do here is actually zip up my my source code, and I'll provide the source code to it. I'll provide the JSON file, so you'll be able to import it into your Nintex Workflow Cloud environment, and you'll see how easy this is to build out, to deploy, and then to make this available in Nintex Workflow Cloud. All right, if you guys have any questions, if you have any suggestions, please don't hesitate to reach out, add comments at the bottom of this blog post or this YouTube video, whatever makes it easier for you guys. Thanks for your time, and hopefully come up with some more interesting stuff in the future. Thanks again.